What has always made the state a hell on earth has been precisely that man has tried to make it heaven. Friedrich Holderlin. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to episode number 12 of the GapFillers podcast. My name is Michael Bradford, and let's get started. So, Trump and the lower courts are going at it this week with multiple injunctions set against him, two primarily focusing on, one focusing on immigration, the other one focusing on transvestites in the military. Hegseth, the Department or the Secretary of Defense, quicked back that if the courts want to decide on military matters, they can show up for duty at Fort Benning. So we'll get into that. Special elections are going on this week, or going on April 1st in Florida here. You have two congressional seats to replace Matt Gaetz and Mike Waltz. Petronas versus Valamonte in CD1, that's Congressional District 1, and Rainey Fine versus Vail in CD6. Both of those are heavily Republican. However, the Democrats, for some reason, have been pouring millions of dollars into those campaigns. Then you have primaries going on, Republican primaries, that is, in Florida District Senate 19 and Florida House number 32. So that is all on April 1st. And then Trump has officially started to dismantle the Department of Education. Hallelujah. We'll get into that. But first, a few weeks ago, I had talked about recommending or highlighting different organizations or places, businesses or organizations in Florida. And the first one today I want to highlight is Thrive Pregnancy Center. This pregnancy center is one of the replacements for the very liberal Planned Parenthood. If you're pro-life like I am, there are other options to help with pregnancies and with all the good stuff that the Democrats claim that Planned Parenthood does, but without the nonsense and the garbage. And they also get the gospel out. So every woman that goes in there is presented with the gospel. It's a safe environment. It's not shoved down their throats, but it's one of those things it basically allows them to get care without the threat of an abortion. So they are having a walk for life to help raise funds this Saturday. And it's at the University Presbyterian Church on Rouse in Orlando. So if you want to help with that, that is one of their primary fundraisers throughout the year. That again is Thrive, and they are having their Walk for Life on Saturday morning. All right. So first, let's get started here with Trump and the lower courts. So the first injunction was made, decreed, so to speak, from a judge this week when Trump was in the process of deporting illegal immigrants to El Salvador. Basically, what has happened is there are illegal immigrants that have committed crimes and are being deported to El Salvador because they've worked out a deal where El Salvador is basically taking in these criminals for half price. So instead of having the prison sentence, which costs about $55,000 to $80,000 per prisoner, they were basically paying, the U.S. government is paying El Salvador about $35,000. So it's a way of both getting two birds with one stone, getting illegal immigrants out of the country, but also the criminals, the violent criminals rather, because if you come into this country illegally, that's automatically a crime. So this is a good start. But what really is happening though is Trump is now battling against the courts going into this. I can see why, especially if you are an American citizen. I'm highly against. I can't stress that enough. Highly against imprisoning or paying other countries to imprison American citizens. American citizens should never leave the country unless they are terrorists at Gitmo, being kept at Gitmo or something like that. Now, Gitmo is a whole nother story that we can get into, at a later date. But really, what it's coming down to is this plane was already over international waters, and Trump basically ignored the injunction. Well, where does the judge decree end? Do their powers range around the world? And the next big issue is do these judges have unlimited power over every little bit of the federal government? Take the next story here with the two transvestites or transvestites being allowed back into the military, which was basically ruled by the Department of Defense last month. Basically, if defense, if soldiers are already having issues with mental health and suicide, why add another suicidal group to that? It doesn't make any sense. And there's no proof. In fact, there's inverse proof that going along with their mental illness, the transvestites, it actually hurts their suicide rate instead of helping it. This could be due to a kind of a similar factor between are children happier under no rules or a lot of rules? And in fact, children are happier under more rules. And when these transvestites basically act like children and don't have the mental capacity and are told they're fine, and it actually just makes their mental illness worse. And because they're not craving the happiness they're seeking is attention. It's not some form of it's not there's no gratification in it. It's a misplaced and sick, perverse way of thinking. And it's all kind of just permeated through with when you allow it and then you support it and they just want support, they just want to be felt and heard and have the same rights as everyone else. No, there's a fundamental problem with people who think that way. And as seen by their suicide rate, right? Christians all around the world are persecuted. However, their suicide rate is nowhere near. And in fact, I believe it's below average. I would be shocked to see it being even on average. And because even we're persecuted around the world, Christians are, and you don't see our suicide rate flying through the roof. But you see transvestites and being bullied, by not having their support of whatever, small thing that they want to get away with, then it just becomes a slippery slope. As soon as it became supporting, gay marriage and and same-sex marriage. As soon as it became okay for that, the next thing was oh yeah, we just want to be able to do trans and stuff like that. And then all of a sudden it was like, okay, then your kids. Oh, then we're teaching your kids. It was the slippery slope was right there, and it's easy to say that. It's easier to see a slippery slope at any given point in any direction. But where do we see it? This one has actively just punched us right in the face, and I think the Trump administration has done very well with getting stomping that out, as opposed to their first term. I was in the military during the first term, and in 2016 we had to go through a transvestite training thing, and I put up the I was told to go along with it. Everybody has to do it. Screw that. And I put up the biggest fight there was, and I made people angry. Anyways, so the question is, where do these judges end? I do not think that impeaching judges for a crime or for overstepping their bounds is a good idea. However, I think they should definitely be reprimanded, and the Supreme Court and appeals courts really very seriously need to figure out where the boundary is. Do these judges, any federal judge, there's thousands or hundreds if not thousands of federal judges out there that are serving these possibly lifetime appointments. Where does their say end? Because the Supreme Court can't take up 1,000 cases. That's why there is lower courts. If there wasn't a 1,000 million cases to be brought, then the Supreme Court could take care of all of them. But the Supreme Court tends to be lazy and slow moving, and impeaching judges for this is not a good idea. Just like impeaching a president for saying something unconstitutional, like for passing a law, is not the right thing either. However, the Supreme Court needs to take up their grow a pair and do what they need to do. However, Judge Roberts has been a pain in everybody's side for as long as we can be. Thanks Bush for appointing him. He's the one that allowed Obamacare to go through, with the mandate of with the mandatory insurance clause, which basically forced you to get everybody in the world, or everybody in the U.S. to get health insurance, or go risk or lose their tax rebates and stuff like that. Anyways, so Roberts has been a pain in the conservative side, the libertarian side, for as long as he's been on the bench. But they move slow, and he's ruled with the liberal judges as pretty much as often as the conservative ones. The problem is that a lot of there's a couple of judges that are getting old on the conservative side, and that might become an issue, especially if the Republicans lose the Senate in the midterms, which is so far out. But anyways, I digress on that. The point is where do these judges, especially lower court, if it was a Supreme Court making an emergency ruling, fine. But it's any one of these judges can make any kind of ruling. No, that's not that's not what the court, the Constitution doesn't even go into the courts as much as people think. A lot of this is precedent and acceptance, and the Supreme Court always runs into this issue where they're trying to balance their legitimacy, and they have to appear impartial when everybody knows they're not impartial. They're all partial. There's conservative judges, and there's conservative and liberal judges, and that's how it's been, since what's his face was Marshall, I think his name was. John Marshall. Anyways, there was one judge in the early. His name is escaping me. I know this judge's name. Anyways, he was basically the one who instituted the balance of the Supreme Court overruling, determining the constitutionality of any law. So the Constitution, ironically, doesn't go into a lot of that. It just pretty much says there shall be a Supreme Court of the land, and basically, and over time, it's become okay. This is the Supreme Court's ruling is to determine whether what the legislation and the executive branch does is it constitutional or not, and that's basically how that developed. The other big thing that Trump has done today, and I can't believe, this is one of the big, huge things, is Trump is officially dismantling the Department of Education. Hallelujah, praise the Lord, pass the ammunition. This is the Department of Education is one of the biggest wastes of government federal funds ever. The government has now spent over $5 trillion or $4 trillion over 50 years, 40 years, good night, 40 years, and has gotten zero, if actually worse, education for it. And all this the Department of Education had really become a money laundering department. They supported these liberal colleges, and they're supporting these teachers unions, and those are the two things. Those are some of the biggest supporters of Democrat and liberal policy there is. In fact, I saw a statistic. If you take the say the white population, if you take educated men and uneducated women and uneducated men, and you take all three of those, all of them turn out to be slightly, if not heavily, conservative. However, when you send white women to a 4-year college, they come out super liberal. We're talking about 30 plus points liberal, as opposed to 30 plus points as white men uneducated. The white men come out slightly conservative, on the slightly conservative end after college, and the uneducated women also, or I say uneducated, but it's just basically not a 4-year degree. But these universities are absolutely bat crap crazy. There's no sense in what they're doing. And who holds the most debt? We're one of the biggest debt holders there are outside of healthcare is college and student debt. And so, and they're constantly promising to, hey, yeah, we'll cancel student debt, and but you can't bankrupt on it, and there's no liability to it, and so, or there's no security, underlying security, and so, the government has basically created over the last 50 years this money laundering organization into the Democratic Party. Same with the USAID. All these programs, turns out, shocking, are basically funding NGOs and that have that fund Democratic ideas. And we're not talking democratic as in like, we have the democracy kind of vote, which that's what they'll claim. And we're talking about literal mind-washing, just dumping money into these organizations. And, and there's a central organization, behind it, the Democratic Party, and they'll hide behind these, they'll hide behind, being caring. Oh, we're caring for people. We're giving people a good education. Don't you want people to have a good education? Well, it turns out when everybody's super, no one is, and it turns out that the more people who get to education or a four-year degree, first of all, the quality goes way down. Excuse me. The quality goes way down, and the price goes way up. And so what you end up doing is basically having 4 more years of high school, where these children get to stay children, but act like they have the freedom of adults. And that's why, college has always been that way. In pop culture, you can even see it. And there, you got frat parties and having a good time and drinking your brains out and sleeping around, and that's basically what college has been in the pop culture for the last like 80 years. And there's really no point in funding something like that. So this is potentially going to save the government $250 billion. That's how much the Department of Education got last year. $250 billion. That's a quarter of the trillion dollars. That is 1/8 of the debt of the United States, of the federal deficit. So by getting rid of the Department of Education, boom, you knock down the deficit. Now, some of this money is going to be returned to the states. Some of it's going to be pushed over into the Department of Commerce and probably agriculture, if I remember right. Basically, they're going to try to keep the in school meals and stuff like that, which I'm not pro. If it comes down to getting rid of the Department of Education, sure, get every kid a free meal, as a free lunch or whatever. But as long as we get rid of this money laundering organization, that's pretty much that pretty much gets rid of a lot of the incentive. Or at least cuts it way down. The scoring standards and force. Basically, what has been happening is the Department of Education would set standards, and then say a conservative state like Florida goes, "Hey, we don't agree with this." The don't say gay bill or whatever it was actually called, that we passed a couple years ago. That DeSantis really basically came to prominence on the national stage outside of COVID. He basically fought with Disney and all this, and basically got rid of a lot of books and stuff that were in libraries and in school libraries. The library can't carry every book, so why carry the transvestite books if we were going to get rid if a library is going to carry books, how about make it the best books possible? And basically they came out of the Democrat Party. Oh, they're banning books. No, they're not banning books. They're banning books from schools. In fact, they're not banning books. They're not allowing schools to carry certain books. It's not even like a book can't be brought in by a student to read. That's not actually banning a book. It was just a insane gesture. It was political pandering is really what it was on the Democrat side. But however, this is not enough because there needs to be one more thing to seal the deal. There needs to be a congressional bill that passes into a law to officially dismantle 100%, never be rebuilt until the Democrats muster all three houses, or the two houses and the presidency. And if basically what will happen is if Trump dismantles the Department of Education, it'll save the money, and then but the department as an entity in theory would still exist, especially if some judge says you can't do that. So basically what's going to happen is some Democrat is eventually going to get into the presidency, and it's going to restore the Democrat money laundering machine in the Department of Education. Now, it will make it a lot harder, and basically it'll take some time to reamp everything, because especially if all the assets are sold off, the office buildings, the all the administrative staff are fired. Basically dwindling it back down to maybe like a one employee kind of deal. And so technically there is a Department of Education, but it doesn't do anything. That would be the best that he would be able to do without the Congress actually passing a bill to officially dismantle it, which ironically is Thomas Massey's bill. So that would he took up the mantle after Ron Paul left Congress, officially reinstating a bill every congressional term to dismantle and to end. It's a one sentence bill to terminate all the Department of Education. That's pretty much what it says. It's literally one sentence. It gets a little bit of support in Congress every year, but ironically, or not ironically, the surprise, the leadership, Mike Johnson, or Paul Ryan, or was it Boehner? Yeah. So all three Republican speakers over the past 10 years, 15, 16 years, haven't taken it up. Shocker. Even though they hold the presidency, even though they hold the Senate, even though they hold the House, they don't take it up for a vote. Why? Who knows? So maybe because there hasn't been any political capital behind it. Now, the majority of the populace is still confused on what the Department of Education actually does. So there's major, in theory, support against dismantling the Department of Education. But Trump's in his he's like in his they call it kids nowadays call it the villain phase. Basically he doesn't care what anybody thinks in theory, and he's doing a lot of good stuff, a lot of stuff I love, but he needs to get Congress to ball up and go behind him. To lock in the Doge cuts, lock in the everything. And if the Senate if the Democrats in the Senate hold it up because Republicans don't have 60 votes, then let them bear that cross. But pass every single law in the House that you can. Every single law, and then let the Democrats filibuster and filibuster and filibuster. But make them have to do it. You can't just say, "Oh, they have the threat of filibuster." No, make them actually filibuster. Or if this is the do or die situation that Trump says, go nuclear. Pass every law by 50 votes. If it really comes down to it, if it's the put up or shut up moment in the United States history, if it comes down to this or the complete dismantling of the entire United States. If it's as bad as Trump and frankly I think it's getting close to it says it is. If Trump says it is, if it's as bad as Trump says it is, and the Democrats are going to get in next year or and during the midterms, these 2 years you need to go nuclear, which is basically getting rid of the filibuster. It would be the last ditch situation because once you go nuclear and set that precedent, it doesn't really go back. It's a Senate rule. It's not in the Constitution that you need 60 votes to get out of debate. The problem is that people have used this law. If you've ever watched Mr. Smith Goes to Washington, that's basically what he does. This was an old Jimmy Stewart movie. He basically holds up the entire Senate by talking. That's what Ted Cruz really came to fame during the Obama administration because of that. He did a 24-hour filibuster. Basically, you have to talk and for 24 hours, or not even for 24 hours, but you have to talk for your in order to not end the debate. So you have to constantly say something. So he famously read the Green Eggs and Ham to his kids from the Senate floor. So something like that, so you have to get rid of the filibuster anyways to get, out of the deadlock. That's the very last thing you want to do. Just like, frankly, impeaching judges. I don't know why he's going after the impeaching judges thing before the nuclear option, because the impeaching judges thing is probably the slipperiest of all slopes. And then it gets really hard to not end the filibuster too. So we're playing with fire. or the Republicans and Trump is really playing with fire, especially with the impeaching thing. Now they went after him and tried to impeach him for every which way, and so I get that. So maybe they actually already overplayed, they set their precedent. So anyways, thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for joining me for episode number 12. If you would like to support the program, don't forget to subscribe on any podcast or any of the streaming services that you would listen to. YouTube, Spotify. Still not on Apple Music. Apple Music is giving me a pain because I don't own an Apple product, so that's going to be a pain. But YouTube, Facebook, if you want to follow me on Facebook, it's GapFillers Podcast. Follow me on X. I'm on X a lot more because it gives me a lot more personal news. That's GapFillers 1776. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, and have a good week.